question and answer period. This is not an incredibly well-populated event today. A lot of folks that you know are here, and there are a number of tables sold, but you usually see a slightly bigger crowd if there's, for example, when we have the 72 Democratic candidates next week, there will be a slightly bigger crowd. So I want to implore each and every person here to ask a question if you have one. I hope you've developed it. If you don't, I know about 11 of you, maybe 14 of you by name, and I will call you by name, starting with Dan Moulthrop. Holding the microphone today, by the way, is Carrie's there. Carrie Miller is the City Club Program Director. So make sure you get her attention so that we can hear your question. And one admonition there, do frame it in the form of a question. It's got a big question mark at the end of it. You kind of rise your voice at the end. That's what a question sounds like. So that's what we're looking for, questions, okay? And let's start with the first here, Mr. Akers.
Jack, curious to have you, I think none of us who know you and watched you can answer this question, but from your own words, what do you consider the 3, 4, 5 most significant accomplishments that you have achieved in your 4 years as a county councilman?
Well, I'll go back to what I think we as a group needed to accomplish right off the bat, and that was to set that honesty and integrity piece, because that clock, we need to set that compass back on the right direction, and I think we've done that. Anybody that has ever seen an organizational transitional structure knows that that's not an easy thing to do. We very easily could have the wheels come off the cart. We could have gone into a bipartisan fight and bickering. None of us let that happen, and so that I know that's not one in which it scores a lot of points because you say you have a checklist of something you did, but that's actually one of the hardest things to do, and I really believe that's probably one of the hardest things we have to go forward on is those what look like soft tasks, but the reorganizational tasks are really tough ones to go forward. I'll get to 2 more just in the interest of other time. I was the chairperson of the Economic Development Committee, which I consider to be the most important committee in Cuyahoga County as far as the responsibility. Because if you look at the charter, 3 of the 6 preambles all talk about economic development and job creation. I see all the charter folks already nodding because they know the preamble back and forth. They probably know it. But what that meant as far as chairing economic development meant the responsibility to make sure these drafted documents, these very early stages where we had nothing on paper, had to be in place. Well, the county had no functional ways of building property and using the techniques that you would see today that are every place else. Design build, construction manager at risk. All the things that you see as techniques that we use in the private sector didn't exist in the public sector. So that was a piece of legislation that I personally drove. We had work with, I see Bob Strickler was here before from the construction industry out there. We all work together. I work with labor unions on it to make sure that the construction labor unions bought into it and understood where we're going. So now we have those tools, even though the specific convention center was not used, we use those exact tools. The legislation wasn't in place, but because we had an exemption, it came in. It allows you to build buildings on time, under budget, and that's how we're building the new convention hotel. We'll be using these techniques of design build out there, which means that you can have things done faster, at a lower cost, and more efficiently. And then the third one is one in which the Kearney County executive, he pushed this over, and I thought it was a good idea. And what he calls his $100 million fund, it's now been turned into the Western Reserve Fund. The idea was, here, let's put forth dollars to go out to stimulate business. Loved the idea, thought it was a great concept, but it lacked any of the meat and bones that needed to be on it. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't support it in this condition. Because as a business owner, you want to know, what are you being scored on? What's the objectives? How do I successfully compete against somebody else bidding for these same dollars? So what we did is we built jobs in, performance, financial status, all of these things that you would expect from a business proposal. It was initially said, oh, this is going to slow it down. It's going to bog down the process. It's going to make it cumbersome. And within 6 months, the same folks that from the executive's office were saying, no, this actually made it better. All of our applicants understood where they're coming from. They understood how they're being scored. And so I consider those to be 3 of the best examples of what I've done in regards to it.
Before we take the next question, I mentioned something about the size of the crowd. And I wonder if you have any thoughts about the folks who aren't here. The idea that you're running for the most important, arguably the most important political office regionally and one of the most important in the state. And I think you've made this point before, sort of listen to the other side, even if you don't identify with that politically. And I wonder what your thoughts are about the size of the crowd.
Well, I'm certainly thrilled with everybody that's in the room.
Right.
That
No
took the
offense
time,
taken.
and I really
To those who are
appreciate
here.
and thank everybody for coming today. But I wish that the dialogue was all encompassing, because that's how we as a society, if we hear both sides of the aisle, we hear both points of view, we hear all of it, then we can make a decision intelligently. And it's kind of sad that we haven't gotten to this point. And by the way, when somebody said, when are you ready for a debate? I'm ready for a debate on Wednesday after the primary. Just tell me when we want to go, because I'll be ready to be prepared and work for that. So I'm disappointed that there aren't more different points of view here. I wish that we had room full of folks on all sides, because my objective is probably to convince them that I should be the county executive. Hopefully the folks in the room, an awful lot of them are believers at this point. But those who are not in the room, if we talk to them and say, this is a year that we want somebody who is an executive, this is a year in which we want somebody to accomplish and be somebody who takes on the tough tasks and finishes it, I'd love to be able to present that message to everybody.
And the folks at the City Club assure me that there will be that kind of dialogue as we approach the general election. Next question, sir.
My name is Attorney Joseph Patrick Meisner, and I'm a lifelong Democrat backing Jack. My question is that when I grew up, our city had almost 1 million people, and we were one of the strongest regions in the world. Today, that's not so true. My question to you is this, and I think you've already given some answers to this in your talk. How can we attract more people, keep our young people here in Cleveland and in the region, attract more companies, and especially attract people from not only around in America, but from other countries to settle here? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Meiser. I appreciate that, and I didn't realize that you were backing Jack, and I thank you very much for that commitment today. That's fantastic. It's the best news I've heard today. So
It says so on a giant sticker on it.
well, it does say that. Well, he had to put it on, but he also he didn't have to make that statement. So I really appreciate that. The objectives here is, how do you get the young people to be here? That's part of it, and I think that young people bring a sense of excitement and enthusiasm. But I think under a Jack Schron administration, we will also be part of all those other parts of the community that need to be successful too. And that's the way we're gonna build this back in our downtown area. One of the ways is, I think that third M is an area that gets excitement to young people. But some of the easy ways. Anybody ridden an airplane in the last 6 months? See a show of hands? See a lot of hands. When somebody says, where are you from? Are you from Cleveland? Are you from Cleveland? And just the same difference of your attitude and your position, because the hardest thing to change is an attitude. And the worst group that we have in the entire United States, about probably Northeastern Ohio, are Northeastern Ohioans. Because we don't sell our own story with the same enthusiasm that you'd sell a product or a person or anything else. So I think that's the second thing that we have to do. We have to be committed in our heart that we're coming back in this way, and I think we are. And then the third element is just simple stuff. One of the gentlemen that sat next to me at church, a few pews away, was head of the folks at Philips Electronics up the top of the hill. And I said to some of my colleagues, Philips, and they said, well, what is that? And I said, well, they're only about as big as General Electric, and they're a pretty good sized organization. We just need to make sure we communicate with them. And so I said, why aren't you in the medical mart? You build some of the top MRI equipment in the entire world. You have 1,100 employees at Highland Heights. You're one of the biggest employers, and you stay low key. Well, nobody asked. Well, it seems to me we need to ask. We need to we need to be an outreach group. Going on with the conversation, I said, what do we need to do to get you to commit more to Northeastern Ohio? You need to be asked. Within the first year and a half, they shut down their R&D lab in Sausalito, California, moved all 100 jobs at $100,000 plus per job to Highland Heights.